Imagine a cold, gray afternoon in the heart of Chicago, where the wind howls through the towering skyscrapers, carrying with it the bite of an early winter. The streets are bustling with people wrapped in scarves and coats, their heads bowed against the chill as they hurry to their destinations. But on a quiet corner, away from the rush, a man sits alone on a bench, his broad shoulders slumped, his silver hair catching the faint light of a flickering street lamp. Michael Stone, 60 years old, is a name that echoes through the city's elite circles, a CEO whose tech empire has made him a billionaire, a man who can buy anything he desires. Yet here he sits, dressed in a tailored black coat, his hands empty, his face etched with a weariness that no amount of wealth can erase. His blue eyes, once sharp and commanding, are dull now, staring at the cracked pavement as if it holds the answers to a life he's long since stopped living. Michael hasn't been the same since his wife, Elizabeth, passed away 5 years ago. They were married for 30 years, a partnership that began with love but ended in silence, their dreams of a family shattered by the cruel truth that they could never have children. Elizabeth's death left him hollow, a shell of the man he once was, and though he fills his days with board meetings and acquisitions, his nights are haunted by the memory of her laughter, her touch, her piercing blue eyes that could see right through him. Today, he's left his office early, something he never does, unable to bear the sterile walls of his penthouse or the endless calls from assistants who don't understand the emptiness inside him. He sits on this bench, a forgotten figure in a city that worships his name, his mind lost in the fog of his own regrets. That's when he hears it, a soft, hesitant voice cutting through the noise of the street, a voice so small it could be swallowed by the wind. "Mister, are you okay?" Michael blinks, startled, and looks up to see a girl standing before him, no more than 12 years old, her thin frame shivering in a tattered jacket that's 2 sizes too big. Her brown hair is tangled, her cheeks smudged with dirt, and her hands clutch a small, crumpled paper bag, the kind you get from a corner store. She's a homeless child, one of the countless faces he's passed on these streets without a second glance, but there's something about her that makes him pause. Her eyes, those striking blue eyes, flecked with a hint of gray, the same shade as Elizabeth's, stare at him with a mix of concern and curiosity, and for a moment, Michael feels the air leave his lungs, his heart thudding in his chest as if he's seen a ghost. The girl doesn't wait for him to answer. She steps closer, her bare feet scuffing against the pavement, and opens the paper bag, pulling out a small piece of bread, the crust hard and stale, the last of whatever meager meal she's managed to scrounge. "You look sad," she says, her voice trembling but kind, a kindness that doesn't belong in a world as harsh as hers. "I don't have much, but you can have this. It's my last piece." She holds the bread out to him, her small hand shaking from the cold, her eyes never leaving his, and Michael feels a wave of shame wash over him, a billionaire being offered the last morsel of food from a child who has nothing. He shakes his head, his voice rough as he speaks for the first time. "No, I can't take that. You need it more than I do." But the girl insists, stepping even closer, her tiny frame dwarfed by his, and as she does, the light from the street lamp catches her face fully, illuminating those blue eyes that seem to pierce straight through him. Michael's breath catches again, his hands trembling as he stares at her, the resemblance to Elizabeth so uncanny it's as if his wife has come back to life in this fragile, broken child. He wants to look away, to dismiss it as a trick of his grief, but he can't. Those eyes hold him captive, stirring a memory he can't quite grasp, a feeling he hasn't felt in years. The girl tilts her head, her expression softening, and she says, "My mom always said to help people who look sad. She's not here anymore, but I try to do what she taught me." Michael's heart pounds, a storm of emotions swirling inside him, grief, guilt, and something else, something he can't name. He wants to ask her who she is, where she came from, why her eyes are so hauntingly familiar, but before he can find the words, the girl sets the bread on the bench beside him, her small hand brushing against his for a fleeting moment. She gives him a shy smile, then turns to walk away, her thin figure disappearing into the crowd, leaving Michael alone with the bread and 1,000 questions. He picks up the piece of bread, his fingers tightening around it, and as he watches her vanish into the gray haze of the city, he feels a pull he can't explain, a whisper in the back of his mind that this moment, this chance encounter, is about to change everything he thought he knew about his past, his wife, and the life he's lived alone for so long. The gray haze of Chicago's early winter clings to the streets as Michael Stone sits on the bench, the piece of stale bread still in his hand, its weight far heavier than it should be. The little girl's words echo in his mind. My mom always said to help people who look sad, and those striking blue eyes, so like Elizabeth's, haunt him, stirring a restlessness he hasn't felt in years. The city moves around him, a blur of hurried footsteps and honking cars, but Michael is frozen, his gaze fixed on the spot where the girl disappeared into the crowd. He's a man who's built a tech empire from nothing, a billionaire who commands boardrooms with a single glance, but in this moment, he feels utterly powerless, a stranger to the emotions swirling inside him. The bread in his hand feels like a judgment, a reminder of the kindness he's long since forgotten, offered by a child who has nothing while he has everything, everything except the one thing he truly wants, a family. Let's step back, rewind the clock to understand the man Michael Stone used to be, the man he was before the loneliness carved a hollow space inside him. Picture him 30 years ago, a young entrepreneur with fire in his veins, a dreamer who turned every challenge into an opportunity. He was relentless, a force of nature who built Stone Tech from a tiny startup in a cramped garage to a global powerhouse, its name synonymous with innovation and wealth. By 40, he was a millionaire, by 50, a billionaire, his face on the cover of Forbes, his name whispered in awe at galas and conferences. But success came at a cost, one he didn't see until it was too late. Michael had always been driven, a man who believed that hard work could solve anything, but that drive left little room for the softer things in life, the things that truly mattered. He met Elizabeth when they were both 25, two kids from small towns with big dreams, their love a quiet, steady flame that burned through the chaos of their early years. She was his anchor, a woman with a laugh that could light up a room and blue eyes that held a depth he could never fully fathom. They married young, promising each other forever, and for a while, they were happy, their days filled with shared dreams of a family, a house full of children's laughter. But those dreams never came true. Doctors delivered the news with clinical precision. Michael couldn't have children, a biological truth that hit him like a sledgehammer. He refused to accept it, threw himself into his work, telling himself that success would be enough, that he and Elizabeth didn't need a family to be complete. But Elizabeth felt the loss differently, her quiet grief a shadow that grew between them, a silent ache he couldn't, or wouldn't, understand. Their marriage began to fray, the threads of their love unraveling under the weight of unspoken pain. Michael worked longer hours, chasing deals and acquisitions, while Elizabeth withdrew, her once bright smile fading with each passing year. They fought, their arguments sharp and bitter, words cutting deeper than either intended. "You care more about your company than you do about me," she'd say, her voice trembling with hurt, and he'd snap back, "I'm doing this for us, Elizabeth. Why can't you see that?" But the truth was, he was running from his own failure, from the guilt of not being able to give her the one thing she wanted most. The breaking point came one stormy night, 10 years into their marriage, when Elizabeth sat him down, her hands folded in her lap, her blue eyes filled with a resolve he hadn't seen in years. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this anymore, Michael. I need more than this." He didn't stop her. He let her walk out into the rain, her suitcase banging against the doorframe, her sobs echoing in the empty house. He told himself she'd come back, that she couldn't live without him, but she didn't. The divorce papers arrived a month later, and Michael signed them without a fight, his pride too wounded to chase after her. He heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to a small town in Wisconsin, that she'd remarried a few years later, but he never reached out, never tried to mend what he'd broken. He buried himself in his work, building his empire higher, telling himself that success was enough, that he didn't need her, didn't need anyone. But when Elizabeth died 5 years ago, a sudden heart attack that stole her away at 55, the news hit him like a freight train, shattering the walls he'd built around his heart. He didn't go to the funeral, couldn't bear to see her laid to rest, but he mourned her in his own way, alone in his penthouse, her blue eyes haunting his dreams. Now, as he sits on this bench, the little girl's act of kindness has cracked open a door he thought was locked forever. He looks down at the bread, its crust hard and unappetizing, and feels a pang of guilt so sharp it takes his breath away. A billionaire, offered the last piece of food from a child who's clearly starving, a child whose eyes remind him of the woman he loved and lost. He stands, his legs unsteady, and scans the street, searching for her small figure in the crowd, but she's gone, swallowed by the city's endless tide. He tucks the bread into his coat pocket, a strange resolve settling over him, a need to find her, to understand why her eyes hold a piece of his past. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of rain, and as Michael steps into the flow of the city, he feels the first stirrings of something he hasn't felt in years, a purpose, a pull, a whisper of hope that this girl, this moment, might be the key to unlocking the life he thought he'd lost forever. The streets of Chicago stretch out before Michael Stone as he walks, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement, the piece of stale bread still tucked in his coat pocket like a talisman. The city's early winter chill bites at his skin, but he barely notices, his mind consumed by the image of the little girl who offered him her last morsel, her blue eyes, so like Elizabeth's, burning into his memory. He scans the crowd, searching for her tattered jacket, her tangled brown hair, but she's vanished into the gray haze of the city, a ghost in a sea of strangers. Michael's heart pounds, a mix of guilt and curiosity driving him forward, a billionaire chasing after a homeless child who stirred something inside him he thought was long dead. The wind howls through the skyscrapers, carrying with it the faint promise of snow, and as he moves deeper into the less polished parts of the city, he feels the weight of his own privilege, a stark contrast to the world he's about to enter, the world of the girl who gave him everything she had. Let's turn our gaze to this little girl, a 12-year-old named Sophie, whose life has been a tapestry of hardship woven with threads of resilience. Picture her just a few hours ago, huddled in an alley behind a diner, her thin body pressed against a brick wall to shield herself from the wind. Her jacket, a faded hand-me-down she found in a dumpster, hangs off her small frame, its sleeves too long, its fabric threadbare. Her brown hair is a tangled mess, her cheeks smudged with dirt, but her blue eyes, those striking blue eyes flecked with gray, shine with a quiet strength, a light that refuses to be extinguished by the darkness of her circumstances. Sophie has been on her own for 2 years now, ever since her mother, Anna, died in a charity hospital bed, a victim of a winter she couldn't survive. Anna was Sophie's everything, a single mother who fought tooth and nail to keep her daughter safe in a world that offered them no mercy. Picture them 5 years ago, living in a cramped, one-room apartment on the outskirts of the city, its walls stained with mold, its windows rattling in the wind. Anna worked as a waitress, her shifts long and grueling, her hands rough from years of scrubbing dishes and carrying trays. She'd come home at dawn, her back aching, her smile weary but warm as she pulled Sophie into her arms, her voice soft as she whispered stories of a better life. "One day, sweetheart," she'd say, her blue eyes, so like Sophie's, shining with a fierce hope, "you'll find someone who'll take care of you. He's out there, I promise." Sophie didn't understand what she meant, not then, but she clung to her mother's words, a fragile thread tying her to a woman who loved her more than life itself. Anna's death came swiftly, a cruel twist of fate that Sophie still can't fully grasp. Pneumonia, the doctor said, brought on by exhaustion and a winter that showed no mercy. She'd worked double shifts to keep Sophie fed, to pay for the medicine that never came in time, and her body gave out, slipping away in the night as Sophie slept beside her, clutching her mother's hand. The social workers came for Sophie the next day, but she ran, terrified of being sent to a foster home where she'd heard stories of neglect and cruelty. She took nothing with her but the clothes on her back and a small, worn wallet that belonged to her mother, its leather cracked, its contents a mystery she couldn't yet unravel. Since then, she survived on the streets, scavenging for food, sleeping in alleys, her only companions the stray cats that curl up beside her for warmth. Every penny Sophie manages to beg or earn goes to one thing, keeping her mother's memory alive. She visits Anna's grave whenever she can, a small, unmarked stone in a forgotten cemetery on the edge of the city, its surface weathered by rain and time. She brings whatever she can find, wildflowers plucked from vacant lots, a pebble she thinks is pretty, her small hands arranging them with care, her voice a whisper as she talks to her mother. "I'm trying, Mom," she'll say, her blue eyes glistening with tears, "I'm trying to be good, like you taught me." That's why she was on the street today, her stomach growling with hunger, her last piece of bread in a crumpled paper bag. She'd been saving it, hoping to make it last another day, but when she saw Michael sitting on that bench, his face so sad, so lost, she couldn't help herself. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Help people who look sad," and so she gave him the only thing she had, her last piece of bread, a small act of kindness in a world that's shown her none. Now, as Sophie slips through the crowd, her bare feet numb from the cold, she doesn't know the storm she's unleashed inside the man she left behind. She doesn't know that her eyes, so like her mother's, have cracked open a door to a past he thought was buried. She ducks into another alley, her small body trembling as she pulls her jacket tighter, her thoughts on the man she tried to help. She hopes he's okay, hopes the bread made him feel a little less sad, but she doesn't dare dream of more. She's a child who's known nothing but loss, a girl who's learned to survive on scraps of hope, and as she curls up against the wall, her blue eyes scanning the darkening sky, she whispers a quiet prayer to her mother, asking for the strength to face another day. Little does she know, the man she gave her last bread to is searching for her, driven by a pull he can't explain, a pull that will lead him to a truth that will change both their lives forever. The Chicago sky darkens as evening creeps in, the first flakes of snow drifting down like whispers of a harsher winter to come. Michael Stone moves through the streets with a purpose he hasn't felt in years, his polished shoes splashing through puddles, his tailored black coat catching the occasional snowflake. The piece of stale bread in his pocket feels like a burning coal, a reminder of the little girl's kindness, her blue eyes, so like Elizabeth's, haunting him with every step. He's a man who's spent decades building walls around his heart, a billionaire who's mastered the art of control, but now he feels that control slipping, a crack forming in the foundation of his carefully constructed life. He scans the faces in the crowd, searching for her tattered jacket, her tangled brown hair, but the city is vast, its streets a labyrinth of shadows, and she's nowhere to be found. Yet something inside him, a whisper of instinct, tells him he can't let her go, not yet, not until he understands why her eyes have stirred a memory he thought was buried deep. Let's step into the past again, this time to a moment Michael has tried to forget, a moment that lingers in the corners of his mind like a ghost he can't exorcise. It's a memory from the early days of his marriage to Elizabeth, before the cracks began to show, before the weight of their unfulfilled dreams drove them apart. Picture them 25 years ago, in the small apartment they shared in Chicago's Lincoln Park, its walls papered with dreams as much as paint. They were young, in love, their laughter filling the space as they danced barefoot in the kitchen, a scratchy record playing on an old turntable. Elizabeth's blue eyes sparkled with mischief as she pulled him close, her voice a soft melody as she whispered, "One day, we'll have a little girl with your smile and my eyes." Michael had laughed, kissing her forehead, believing with all his heart that their future would be as bright as her gaze. But that dream was tested, strained by the reality of their infertility, a truth that hit Michael harder than he'd ever admit. He buried his pain in work, telling himself that success would fill the void, but Elizabeth couldn't let go so easily. She'd sit by the window, her hands folded in her lap, her blue eyes distant as she watched children play in the park below. "Maybe we can adopt," she'd suggested once, her voice tentative, but Michael had shut her down, his pride too wounded to consider it. "I don't want someone else's child," he'd snapped, his words sharper than he intended, and the hurt in her eyes had been a knife to his heart. He didn't know then that there was another secret, one Elizabeth kept locked away, a secret that would come back to haunt him decades later. During their marriage, before the divorce, there was a brief period of separation, a few months when Michael's obsession with building stone tech drove a wedge between them. Elizabeth had gone to stay with her sister in Wisconsin, needing space to breathe, to think. What Michael didn't know, what she never told him, was that during that time, she'd had a fleeting moment of weakness, a night with an old friend from college, a man who'd always loved her from afar. It was a mistake, One she regretted instantly, but it left her with a consequence she couldn't ignore: she was pregnant. She returned to Michael, determined to make their marriage work, but she never told him about the child, knowing he'd never believe it was his, not after the doctor's diagnosis. When their marriage finally crumbled, Elizabeth left for good, taking her secret with her, raising the child, Sophie, in a small town far from the city, far from the man she still loved but couldn't stay with. Now, as Michael searches the streets for the little girl who gave him her last bread, he doesn't know the full weight of that secret, doesn't know that Sophie is the daughter Elizabeth dreamed of, the daughter he never knew he had. But there's a clue, a small piece of the puzzle that Sophie carries with her, tucked inside the cracked leather wallet that once belonged to her mother. Inside that wallet is a photograph, faded and worn from years of handling, a picture of Elizabeth and Michael in happier times, their arms around each other, their smiles bright with hope. On the back, in Elizabeth's careful handwriting, are the words, "To my love, Michael, forever yours." Sophie doesn't know who the man in the photo is, doesn't understand the significance of the words, but she's kept it close, a piece of her mother she can't let go, a mystery she hopes to unravel one day. As Sophie huddles in the alley where she's taken shelter, her small body shivering against the cold, she pulls the wallet from her pocket, her fingers tracing the edges of the photograph. She looks at her mother's face, so like her own, and whispers, "I miss you, Mom. I wish you were here to tell me who he is." She doesn't know that the man in the photo is searching for her, driven by a pull he can't explain, a pull that's drawing him closer to the truth. The snow falls heavier now, blanketing the city in a quiet hush, and as Michael turns down another street, his blue eyes scanning the shadows, he feels a strange certainty settle over him, a certainty that this girl, this child with Elizabeth's eyes, is more than a stranger, that she might just be the key to unlocking a past he thought was lost forever, a past that holds a daughter he never knew he had. The snow falls steadily now, a soft white veil draping Chicago in a quiet that feels almost sacred, the city's usual clamor muted by the gathering storm. Michael Stone moves through the streets with a determination that borders on desperation, his tailored black coat dusted with snowflakes, his silver hair catching the faint glow of streetlights. The piece of stale bread in his pocket is a constant reminder of the little girl who gave him her last morsel, her blue eyes, so like Elizabeth's, burning into his memory like a brand. He's a man who's spent decades building an empire, a billionaire who's never known failure, but now he feels the sting of it, the ache of not finding her, the child who stirred something inside him he thought was long dead. He's searched for hours, weaving through the city's labyrinth of alleys and side streets, his breath fogging in the frigid air, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. He doesn't know what he'll say if he finds her, doesn't know what he's looking for, but he knows he can't stop, not now, not when those eyes have cracked open a door to a past he thought was buried. The streets grow narrower as he ventures into a part of the city he's never seen, a place where the skyscrapers give way to crumbling buildings, their windows boarded up, their walls tagged with graffiti. The air smells of damp concrete and decay, a stark contrast to the polished world Michael usually inhabits, and he feels the weight of his privilege like a physical thing, a heavy cloak he can't shed. He's about to turn back, to admit defeat, when he hears a soft sound, a faint cough, barely audible over the wind. He stops, his head turning toward a narrow alley tucked between two abandoned storefronts, its entrance shadowed by a sagging awning. His heart leaps, a flicker of hope igniting inside him, and he steps closer, his polished shoes crunching on the snow-dusted pavement, his blue eyes straining to see through the darkness. There she is, Sophie, the little girl who gave him her bread, curled up against the brick wall of the alley, her thin body shivering in her tattered jacket, her bare feet tucked beneath her in a futile attempt to keep warm. Her brown hair is dusted with snow, her cheeks pale, but her blue eyes, those haunting blue eyes, shine with a quiet resilience as she looks up at him, startled by his presence. For a moment, they just stare at each other, the billionaire and the homeless child, two worlds colliding in the dim light of the alley. Michael's breath catches, the resemblance to Elizabeth hitting him again, harder this time, like a wave that threatens to pull him under. He takes a step closer, his hands trembling, and Sophie flinches, her small body tensing as if she's ready to run, her instincts honed by years on the streets. "Don't be afraid, Michael says, his voice low, almost a whisper, as he raises his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm not going to hurt you. I just wanted to find you. Sophie's eyes narrow, a flicker of suspicion in their depths, but there's something in his tone, a rawness she recognizes, that makes her stay. She clutches her mother's cracked leather wallet tighter, her fingers white-knuckled around it, and studies him, her gaze searching his face for a sign of danger. Why? She asks, her voice small but steady, a child who's learned to be brave in a world that's shown her little kindness. Why did you follow me? Michael hesitates, the question catching him off guard, and he kneels in the snow, bringing himself to her level, his expensive coat soaking up the cold as he looks into her eyes. I couldn't stop thinking about you, he says, his voice rough with emotion, a truth he didn't expect to admit. You gave me your last piece of bread, even though you're hungry. I've never met anyone who would do that, not for a stranger. He pauses, his gaze dropping to the ground, the weight of his own words pressing down on him. And your eyes, they remind me of someone I loved, someone I lost a long time ago. Sophie tilts her head, her suspicion softening into curiosity, and she loosens her grip on the wallet, her small hand brushing against the cracked leather as if it holds the answers she needs. My mom? She asks, her voice barely audible, a question that sends a jolt through Michael, his heart racing as he looks up at her, his blue eyes wide with a mix of hope and dread. Your mom? He repeats, the words tasting like ash in his mouth, a possibility he hadn't dared to consider. Sophie nods, her small hand trembling as she opens the wallet, pulling out the faded photograph she's carried for years, the one of her mother and a man she doesn't know. She holds it out to him, her blue eyes searching his face, and Michael takes it with shaking hands, his breath hitching as he sees the image, Elizabeth, young and radiant, her arm around him, their smiles bright. With a love he thought he'd never feel again. The handwriting on the back, to my love, Michael, forever yours, E. is a dagger to his heart, a piece of the past he thought was gone, now staring him in the face in the form of this child, this girl with Elizabeth's eyes. He looks from the photo to Sophie, his face pale, his voice a whisper as he asks, who was your mother? And as Sophie opens her mouth to answer, the snow falls around them, a silent witness to a moment that will change their lives forever. The alley in Chicago's underbelly feels like a frozen tableau, the snow falling in slow, deliberate flakes, blanketing the grime of the city in a deceptive purity. Michael Stone kneels in the snow, his tailored black coat soaking up the cold, his silver hair dusted with white, but he doesn't care. His blue eyes are locked on the faded photograph in his trembling hands, the image of him and Elizabeth from a lifetime ago, her handwriting on the back, to my love, Michael, forever yours, E. A searing reminder of a love he lost, a life he let slip away. Across from him, Sophie sits huddled against the brick wall, her thin body shivering in her tattered jacket, her bare feet tucked beneath her, but her blue eyes, those haunting blue eyes that mirror Elizabeth's, watch him with a mix of curiosity and caution. The air between them is thick with unspoken questions, the weight of a past neither fully understands pressing down on them like the snow piling up around them. Michael's breath comes in shallow gasps, the photograph a bridge to a time he thought was buried, a time when he and Elizabeth were young and full of hope, before the bitterness of their unfulfilled dreams tore them apart. He looks up at Sophie, his voice barely a whisper, the question hanging between them like a fragile thread. Who was your mother? Sophie hesitates, her small hand clutching the cracked leather wallet, her blue eyes searching his face for something, trust, perhaps, or a sign that she can let her guard down. She's a child who's known nothing but survival, a girl who's learned to be wary of strangers, but there's something in Michael's expression, a raw vulnerability she's never seen in anyone before, that makes her speak. Her name was Anna, she says softly, her voice trembling with the weight of memory. Anna Carter. She died 2 years ago. She was all I had. The name hits Michael like a punch, a name he doesn't recognize, a name that doesn't fit the puzzle he's trying to piece together. Anna Carter, not Elizabeth Stone. His mind races, a storm of confusion and doubt swirling inside him. He wants to believe that Sophie's mother was someone else, that this resemblance is a cruel trick of fate, but those blue eyes, the photograph, the handwriting, they're all threads tying him to a truth he can't ignore. He looks at the picture again, his fingers tracing Elizabeth's face, and a memory surfaces, sharp and painful, a memory of the months they were separated, when Elizabeth left him to stay with her sister in Wisconsin. He'd been so consumed by his work, so focused on building Stone Tech, that he didn't question her silence, didn't wonder what she was doing, who she was with. But now, as he looks at Sophie, he feels a growing dread, a suspicion that there's more to that time than he ever knew. Anna Carter, he repeats, his voice hoarse, almost pleading, as if saying the name again will make it fit, will make it less real. He looks at Sophie, his gaze intense, searching her face for more answers. Did your mother ever talk about me? About Michael? Sophie tilts her head, her brow furrowing as she thinks, her small hand brushing against the photograph in his hand. She didn't say your name, she says slowly, her voice soft but clear, but she told me about a man she loved a long time ago, a man who didn't want her anymore. She said he was important, that he had a big company, but he didn't believe in her, so she left. She said I'd find him one day, that he'd see me and know. Her words trail off, her blue eyes glistening with tears, and she looks down, her small shoulders shaking as the weight of her mother's memory washes over her. Michael's heart stops, the air leaving his lungs in a rush, his hands trembling so violently he nearly drops the photograph. The man she loved, the man with a big company, the man who didn't believe in her, it's him, it has to be him. But Elizabeth never went by Anna, never mentioned a child, never gave him any reason to think. His mind reels, 1,000 questions crashing against each other, but one thought rises above the rest, a thought so staggering it makes his blood run cold. What if Elizabeth had a child during their separation, a child she kept secret, a child she raised under a different name to protect her from a man who'd already rejected her? He looks at Sophie again, her blue eyes so like Elizabeth's, her face a haunting echo of the woman he loved, and he feels the ground shift beneath him, a seismic crack in the foundation of everything he thought he knew. He reaches out, his hand trembling as he touches her shoulder, his voice a broken whisper. Your mother, did she ever show you this picture? Did she tell you who I am? Sophie looks up at him, her tears spilling over, and she nods, her small hand reaching into the wallet again, pulling out a tiny, folded piece of paper, its edges worn from years of handling. She unfolds it, her fingers careful, and hands it to him, her blue eyes locked on his. She wrote this for you, she says, her voice barely audible over the wind. She said if I ever found you, I should give it to you. She said it would make you understand. Michael takes the paper, his heart pounding, and as he reads the words written in Elizabeth's familiar handwriting, Michael, she's yours. I never told you because you wouldn't believe me. Forgive me, E. He feels the world tilt, a truth he can't deny crashing down around him, a truth that will change everything he thought he knew about his past, his wife, and the little girl shivering in the snow before him. The snow falls heavier now, a relentless curtain of white that cloaks the alley in a surreal silence, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Michael Stone kneels in the snow, his tailored black coat soaked through, his silver hair plastered to his forehead, but he doesn't feel the cold. His hands tremble as he holds the folded piece of paper, the words written in Elizabeth's familiar handwriting searing into his soul, Michael, she's yours. I never told you because you wouldn't believe me. Forgive me, E. The note is a bombshell, a revelation that shatters the fragile walls he's built around his heart, and as he looks at Sophie, the little girl shivering before him, her blue eyes, so like Elizabeth's, glistening with tears, he feels the weight of a truth he can't deny. The alley, with its crumbling bricks and flickering streetlight, becomes a crucible, a place where the past and present collide, where a billionaire CEO and a homeless child are bound by a secret that's been buried for 12 years. Sophie watches him, her small body tense, her bare feet tucked beneath her in a futile attempt to ward off the cold. She's a child who's known nothing but survival, a girl who's learned to read people with a glance, and she sees the storm in Michael's eyes, the way his hands shake as he reads her mother's note. She doesn't fully understand the words she's carried for so long, doesn't know the man in the photograph, but she knows her mother's dying wish, to find him, to give him this note, to make him understand. She wrote it before she got sick, Sophie says, her voice small but steady, a child clinging to the memory of her mother. She said you were important, that you'd know what it meant. She said you'd see me and know. Her words are a dagger, each one piercing deeper into Michael's heart, and he feels a sob rising in his throat, a raw, aching sound he can't hold back. He looks at the note again, his vision blurring as tears sting his eyes, the words a confession from a woman he loved and lost, a woman he failed in ways he's only now beginning to understand. Elizabeth had a child, his child, during their separation, a child she kept secret because she knew he'd never believe her, not after the doctors told him he couldn't have children, not after he let his pride drive her away. He remembers that stormy night when she left, her suitcase banging against the doorframe, her sobs echoing in the empty house, and he remembers the months before, when she'd gone to Wisconsin, her silence a wall he didn't try to breach. He'd been so consumed by his work, so focused on building Stone Tech, that he didn't question her, didn't wonder what she was hiding. But now, as he looks at Sophie, her blue eyes a mirror of Elizabeth's, her face a haunting echo of the woman he loved, he realizes the depth of his mistake, the cost of his arrogance. You're my daughter, he whispers, the words tasting foreign on his tongue, a truth so staggering it feels like a dream. He looks at Sophie, his blue eyes wide with a mix of awe and anguish, and she tilts her head, her brow furrowing as she processes his words. Your daughter, she repeats, her voice trembling, a child who's never known a father, who's never dared to dream of one. She looks down at the photograph in his hand, the image of her mother and this man, and then back at him, her blue eyes searching his face for a sign that he's telling the truth. Mom said you didn't want us, she says softly, her voice breaking on the last word, and the accusation in her tone is a knife to Michael's heart, a reminder of the man he was, the man who let his pride destroy the only thing that ever mattered. He shakes his head, his tears spilling over, his voice raw as he speaks. I didn't know, he says, his words a plea, a confession, a prayer. I didn't know you existed, Sophie. If I had, I would have. I would have done everything to find you, to keep you both. I loved your mother, more than anything, but I failed her. I failed you. He reaches out, his hand trembling as he touches her cheek, his fingers brushing against her cold skin, and Sophie flinches at first, her instincts screaming at her to run, but something in his touch, a tenderness she's never known, makes her stay. She looks into his eyes, sees the pain there, the regret, and for the first time, she feels a flicker of something she can't name, a connection, a hope, a possibility that she's not as alone as she's always believed. The snow falls around them, a silent witness to a moment that's as painful as it is beautiful, a father and daughter meeting for the first time, bound by a love that's been buried for years. Michael pulls the piece of bread from his pocket, the bread Sophie gave him, and holds it out to her, his voice a broken whisper. You gave me this, even though you had nothing, he says, his tears falling freely now, a billionaire humbled by the kindness of a child. I don't deserve it, but I want to deserve you. Let me take care of you, Sophie. Let me be the father I should have been. Sophie looks at the bread, then at him, her blue eyes shining with a trust that breaks his heart, and as the snow blankets the alley, she nods, a small, tentative gesture that feels like a lifeline, a promise of a future neither of them thought they'd ever have. The alley in Chicago, now blanketed in a thick layer of snow, feels like a sacred space, a cocoon where the world's harshness is momentarily held at bay. Michael Stone kneels before Sophie, his tailored black coat soaked through, his silver hair glistening with melting snowflakes, but he doesn't feel the cold. His blue eyes are locked on the little girl before him, her tattered jacket and bare feet a stark contrast to his polished exterior, yet in this moment, they are equals, bound by a truth that has shattered the walls around his heart. Sophie's blue eyes, so like Elizabeth's, shine with a fragile trust, her small nod a silent acceptance of his plea to be her father, a role he's only just discovered he was meant to play. The piece of stale bread lies in the snow between them, a symbol of her kindness, a kindness that has brought them to this moment, a kindness that has changed everything. Michael's hands tremble as he reaches for her again, his fingers gentle as he brushes a snowflake from her cheek, his voice a whisper of awe and regret. "You're my daughter," he says again, the words still foreign, still staggering, but now they carry a certainty, a vow he's determined to keep. He pulls the faded photograph from his pocket, the image of him and Elizabeth, her handwriting on the back, "To my love, Michael, forever yours, E." A testament to a love he failed, a love that gave him this child he never knew he had. But there's more to the story, a piece of the puzzle that's been missing, a truth that Elizabeth's note, "Michael, she's yours. I never told you because you wouldn't believe me. Forgive me, E." Only hinted at. As Michael looks at Sophie, his mind races, piecing together the fragments of a past he thought he understood, a past that's now unraveling before him. Sophie watches him, her small body shivering, her blue eyes wide with a mix of hope and uncertainty. She's a child who's known nothing but loss, a girl who's survived on the streets with only her mother's memory to guide her, and now this man, this stranger who claims to be her father, is offering her something she's never dared to dream of, a family. She clutches her mother's cracked leather wallet, her fingers tracing its edges, and her voice is soft, almost a whisper, as she speaks. "Mom said you didn't want us," she repeats, her words a quiet echo of the accusation she made earlier, but this time there's no anger, only a child's need to understand. Michael's heart clenches, the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him, and he shakes his head, his tears falling freely now, a billionaire stripped bare by the innocence of his daughter's gaze. "I didn't know, Sophie," he says, his voice breaking, a confession that lays him raw. "I didn't know you existed. Your mother, she left me, and I let her go. I thought I couldn't have children, the doctors told me it was impossible, so when she tried to tell me, I didn't believe her. I was a fool, a coward, and I drove her away." He pauses, his breath hitching, and he pulls another item from his pocket, a small, silver locket he's carried for years, a gift he gave Elizabeth on their 5th anniversary, its surface engraved with a tiny heart. He opens it, revealing a faded photograph of them together, a mirror of the one Sophie carries, and he holds it out to her, his voice trembling. "This was hers. I gave it to her a long time ago, before everything fell apart. I never thought I'd see it again, but I think she wanted you to have it." Sophie takes the locket, her small hands shaking as she traces the heart engraving, her blue eyes filling with tears as she looks at the photograph inside. It's her mother, younger, happier, her smile radiant beside the man who's now kneeling before her, the man who says he's her father. She looks up at Michael, her voice a whisper, a question that carries the weight of her entire life. "Why did she call herself Anna? Why didn't she tell me about you?" Michael's breath catches, the question a key to the final piece of the puzzle, a truth he's only now beginning to grasp. He thinks back to the note, to Elizabeth's words, "I never told you because you wouldn't believe me," and a memory surfaces, sharp and vivid, a memory of the last time he saw her, the night she left, her blue eyes filled with a pain he didn't understand. "Elizabeth, your mother, she changed her name to protect you," he says, his voice steady now, the truth falling into place like the final piece of a shattered mosaic. "She knew I wouldn't believe the child was mine, not after what the doctors said, not after I pushed her away. So she left, started over as Anna Carter, raised you on her own, kept you safe from a man who wasn't ready to be a father. She gave up everything, her name, her past, me, to give you a chance at a life free from my mistakes." He pauses, his tears falling onto the snow, his voice a broken whisper. "But she never stopped loving you, Sophie. She wanted me to find you, to see you, to know you're mine. And now that I do, I'll never let you go." Sophie's tears spill over, her small body shaking as she clutches the locket, her mother's words echoing in her mind, "You'll find him one day, and he'll know." She looks at Michael, sees the love in his eyes, the regret, the promise, and she throws herself into his arms, her thin frame trembling against his as they cry together, a father and daughter reunited after 12 years of separation. The snow falls around them, a silent witness to a moment of healing, a moment that mends a fracture in time, and as Michael holds his daughter for the first time, he feels a peace he hasn't known since Elizabeth left, a peace that tells him this child, this love, is worth more than all the empires he's ever built. The snow continues to fall over Chicago, a gentle shroud that softens the city's sharp edges, but in the alley where Michael Stone kneels with Sophie in his arms, the cold feels distant, a mere whisper against the warmth of their reunion. Michael holds his daughter tightly, her small body trembling against his, her tattered jacket a frail barrier against the winter's bite. Her blue eyes, those haunting blue eyes that mirror Elizabeth's, are closed now, her cheek pressed against his chest, her tears soaking into his coat as she clings to him, a child who's finally found a safe harbor after years of storms. Michael's own tears fall silently, his silver hair dusted with snow, his tailored black coat ruined by the damp, but he doesn't care. He's a billionaire who's spent decades chasing wealth, a man who thought he'd lost everything that mattered, but now, as he holds Sophie, he realizes he's been given a second chance, a chance to be the father he should have been, the man Elizabeth always believed he could be. He pulls back slightly, his hands gentle as he cups Sophie's face, his blue eyes searching hers, a mixture of awe and sorrow in their depths. "I'm so sorry, Sophie," he whispers, his voice raw, a confession that strips him bare. "I didn't know you were out there, all these years, alone. I failed your mother, and I failed you, but I swear, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." Sophie looks up at him, her tears glistening in the dim light of the alley, and she nods, a small, tentative gesture that carries the weight of her trust, a trust that humbles him more than any boardroom victory ever could. She clutches the silver locket he gave her, the one that once belonged to Elizabeth, her fingers tracing the heart engraving, and whispers, "I knew you'd find me. Mom said you would." Her words are a balm to his wounded soul, a reminder of Elizabeth's faith in him, a faith he's determined to honor. Michael stands, lifting Sophie into his arms with an ease that belies his 60 years, her small frame light as a feather, her body still shivering from the cold. He wraps his coat around her, shielding her from the snow, and carries her out of the alley, his steps steady despite the storm. The city stretches out before them, its lights blurred by the falling snow, but Michael sees none of it, his focus entirely on the child in his arms, his daughter, the daughter he never knew he had. He thinks of Elizabeth, of the life they could have had, the family they dreamed of, and the memory is a sharp ache in his chest, a reminder of all he's lost. He remembers the night she left, her blue eyes filled with pain, her voice trembling as she said, "I can't do this anymore, Michael." He didn't stop her, didn't fight for her, and that failure has haunted him for 25 years. But now, as he holds Sophie, he sees Elizabeth in every line of her face, every flicker of her eyes, and he knows this is his chance to atone, to be the man she always wanted him to be. He carries Sophie to his car, a sleek black sedan parked a few blocks away, its engine still warm from his earlier search. He settles her in the passenger seat, wrapping her in a blanket he keeps in the trunk, his hands careful as he tucks it around her, her small body still trembling but her eyes bright with a cautious hope. He starts the car, the heater humming to life, and as the warmth fills the space, he looks at her, his voice soft but firm. "You're coming home with me," he says, a statement that's as much a promise to himself as it is to her. "You'll never have to sleep on the streets again, Sophie. I'll take care of you, I swear it." Sophie nods, her blue eyes shining with tears, and she reaches for his hand, her small fingers curling around his, a gesture that feels like a lifeline, a connection he thought he'd never have. As they drive through the snow-covered streets, Michael's mind drifts, a storm of emotions swirling inside him. He thinks of the years he spent alone, the nights he sat in his penthouse staring at the city skyline, the emptiness inside him a constant ache. He thinks of Elizabeth, of the love they shared, the dreams they lost, and the secret she kept, a secret that gave him Sophie, a daughter he never knew he had. He thinks of his own failures, the pride that drove Elizabeth away, the arrogance that made him believe he didn't need her, didn't need anyone. But now, as he glances at Sophie, her small hand still in his, he feels a shift inside him, a crumbling of the walls he's built around his heart, a dawning realization that this child, this fragile, brave girl, is his chance at redemption, his chance to be the father he should have been, the man Elizabeth always saw beneath his flaws. The car pulls up to his penthouse, a towering glass structure that looms over the city, its lights reflecting off the snow like a beacon. Michael carries Sophie inside, her small body nestled against his, and as the elevator ascends, he makes a silent vow, to be the father she deserves, to give her the life Elizabeth would have wanted, to honor the memory of the woman he loved by loving their daughter with all he has. The elevator doors open, and as he steps into the warmth of his home, Sophie's blue eyes wide with wonder at the luxury she's never known, Michael feels a flicker of hope, a spark of purpose that lights the darkness he's lived in for so long. He knows the road ahead won't be easy, knows he has years of absence to make up for, but as he sets Sophie down, her small hand still in his, he's ready to try, ready to be the father he was always meant to be. The morning sun rises over Chicago, its golden rays piercing through the heavy snow clouds, casting a warm glow across the city that feels like a promise of renewal. Inside Michael Stone's penthouse, the light streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the sleek, modern space that's always felt more like a museum than a home. But today, it's different. The air is filled with the soft sound of Sophie's laughter, a melody that bounces off the marble floors and glass walls, bringing life to a place that's known only silence for far too long. Michael stands in the kitchen, a space he's rarely used, his sleeves rolled up as he flips pancakes on a griddle, a task he's never attempted but is determined to master for the little girl sitting at the counter. Sophie, freshly bathed and dressed in a soft sweater and jeans that Michael's assistant rushed to buy last night, watches him with wide blue eyes, her tangled brown hair now brushed and shining, a smile on her face that mirrors Elizabeth's in a way that makes his heart ache. The past 12 hours have been a whirlwind, a blur of emotions and decisions that have transformed Michael's life in ways he never thought possible. After bringing Sophie home last night, he'd watched her fall asleep on the couch, her small body curled up under a blanket, her blue eyes finally closing in a peace she hasn't known in years. He'd sat beside her for hours, unable to take his eyes off her, the reality of her presence, a daughter, his daughter, settling over him like a warm tide. He'd thought of Elizabeth, of the love they shared, the mistakes he made, and the secret she kept to protect this child from a man who wasn't ready to be a father. But now, as he looks at Sophie, her laughter filling the penthouse, he knows he's been given a second chance, a chance to be the man Elizabeth always believed he could be, the father Sophie deserves. Sophie claps her hands as Michael slides a slightly lumpy pancake onto her plate, her blue eyes sparkling with delight. "It looks funny, but I bet it tastes good," she says, her voice bright, a child who's known hunger but now sits at a table laden with more food than she's seen in years. Michael smiles, a genuine smile that feels foreign on his face, and sits across from her, his own plate untouched as he watches her eat, her small hands sticky with syrup, her laughter a balm to his wounded soul. "You're right," he says, his voice soft, a warmth in his tone that he hasn't heard in decades. "It's not perfect, but we'll get better. We've got time." Sophie nods, her mouth full, and reaches for his hand, her small fingers curling around his, a gesture that's become their anchor, a silent promise that they're in this together. Later, Michael takes Sophie to the small cemetery on the edge of the city, the place where Anna, Elizabeth, rests, her unmarked grave a quiet testament to a life of struggle and love. Sophie carries a bouquet of white roses, her mother's favorite, her small hands arranging them with care, her blue eyes glistening with tears as she whispers, "I found him, Mom. Just like you said I would." Michael kneels beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his voice a whisper as he speaks to the woman he loved and lost. "I'm sorry, Elizabeth," he says, his tears falling onto the snow-dusted ground. "I didn't know, but I'm here now. I'll take care of her, I promise. I'll love her like you did." Sophie leans against him, her small body warm against his, and they sit together in the quiet, a father and daughter united by a love that transcends time, a love that Elizabeth nurtured even in her absence. Back at the penthouse, Michael sets up a small memorial for Elizabeth in the living room, a framed photograph of her smiling, her blue eyes radiant, placed beside the silver locket he gave Sophie. Sophie adds her own touch, a drawing she made of the three of them, her mother watching from the sky, her small hand in Michael's, and they sit together, sharing stories of Elizabeth, their laughter and tears a testament to the love that binds them. Michael looks at Sophie, sees the future in her eyes, and makes a decision. He calls his lawyer, setting in motion the process to legally adopt Sophie, ensuring she'll always be his, and then he contacts his board, announcing a new initiative, a foundation in Elizabeth's name, dedicated to building shelters for the homeless, to giving children like Sophie a chance at a better life. It's a small act, a way to honor Elizabeth's memory, to atone for the years he turned a blind eye to the suffering around him, but it feels right, a step toward the man he wants to be. As evening falls, Michael tucks Sophie into her new bed, a room he's had decorated with soft colors and stuffed animals, her blue eyes heavy with sleep but shining with a peace she's never known. "Good night, Daddy," she whispers, the word a gift he never thought he'd hear, and he kisses her forehead, his voice a promise as he replies, "Good night, sweetheart. I'll be here when you wake up." He steps out, leaving the door ajar, and stands by the window, the city skyline glittering below, its lights a constellation of possibilities. He thinks of the piece of bread that started it all, of Sophie's kindness, of Elizabeth's love, and he knows that this, family, redemption, purpose, is the true wealth he's been searching for all along. The snow has stopped, the sky clear now, and as Michael looks out at the city, he feels a quiet hope, a certainty that the future, with Sophie by his side, will be brighter than he ever dared to dream. Her body still shivering from the cold. He wraps his coat around her, shielding her from the snow, then carries her out of the alley, his step steady despite the storm. The city stretches out before them, its lights blurred by the falling snow, but Michael sees none of it, his focus entirely on the child in his arms, his daughter, the daughter he never knew he had. He thinks of Elizabeth, of the life they could have had, the family they dreamed of, and the memory is a sharp ache in his chest, a reminder of all he's lost. He remembers the night she left, her blue eyes filled with pain, her voice trembling as she said, "I can't do this anymore, Michael." He didn't stop her, didn't fight for her, and that failure has haunted him for 25 years. But now, as he holds Sophie, he sees Elizabeth in every line of her face, every flicker of her eyes, and he knows this is his chance to atone, to be the man she always wanted him to be. He carries Sophie to his car, a sleek black sedan parked a few blocks away, its engine still warm from his earlier search. He settles her in the passenger seat, wrapping her in a blanket he keeps in the trunk, his hands careful as he tucks it around her, her small body still trembling but her eyes bright with a cautious hope. He starts the car, the heater humming to life, and as the warmth fills the space, he looks at her, his voice soft but firm. "You're coming home with me," he says, a statement that's as much a promise to himself as it is to her. "You'll never have to sleep on the streets again, Sophie. I'll take care of you, I swear it." Sophie nods, her blue eyes shining with tears, and she reaches for his hand, her small fingers curling around his, a gesture that feels like a lifeline, a connection he thought he'd never have. As they drive through the snow-covered streets, Michael's mind drifts, a storm of emotions swirling inside him. He thinks of the years he spent alone, the nights he sat in his penthouse staring at the city skyline, the emptiness inside him a constant ache. He thinks of Elizabeth, of the love they shared, the dreams they lost, and the secret she kept, a secret that gave him Sophie, a daughter he never knew he had. He thinks of his own failures, the pride that drove Elizabeth away, the arrogance that made him believe he didn't need her, didn't need anyone. But now, as he glances at Sophie, her small hand still in his, he feels a shift inside him, a crumbling of the walls he's built around his heart, a dawning realization that this child, this fragile, brave girl, is his chance at redemption, his chance to be the father he should have been, the man Elizabeth always saw beneath his flaws. The car pulls up to his penthouse, a towering glass structure that looms over the city, its lights reflecting off the snow like a beacon. Michael carries Sophie inside, her small body nestled against his, and as the elevator ascends, he makes a silent vow, to be the father she deserves, to give her the life Elizabeth would have wanted, to honor the memory of the woman he loved by loving their daughter with all he has. The elevator doors open, and as he steps into the warmth of his home, Sophie's blue eyes wide with wonder at the luxury she's never known. Michael feels a flicker of hope, a spark of purpose that lights the darkness he's lived in for so long. He knows the road ahead won't be easy, knows he has years of absence to make up for, but as he sets Sophie down, her small hand still in his, he's ready to try, ready to be the father he was always meant to be. The morning sun rises over Chicago, its golden rays piercing through the heavy snow clouds, casting a warm glow across the city that feels like a promise of renewal. Inside Michael Stone's penthouse, the light streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the sleek, modern space that's always felt more like a museum than a home. But today, it's different. The air is filled with the soft sound of Sophie's laughter, a melody that bounces off the marble floors and glass walls, bringing life to a place that's known only silence for far too long. Michael stands in the kitchen, a space he's rarely used, his sleeves rolled up as he flips pancakes on a griddle, a task he's never attempted but is determined to master like the little girl sitting at the counter. Sophie, freshly bathed and dressed in a soft sweater and jeans that Michael's assistant rushed to buy last night, watches him with wide blue eyes, her tangled brown hair now brushed and shiny, a smile on her face that mirrors Elizabeth's in a way that makes his heart ache. The past 12 hours have been a whirlwind, a blur of emotions and decisions that have transformed Michael's life in ways he never thought possible. After bringing Sophie home last night, he watched her fall asleep on the couch, her small body curled up under a blanket, her blue eyes finally closing in a peace she hasn't known in years. He'd sat beside her for hours, unable to take his eyes off her, the reality of her presence, a daughter, his daughter, settling over him like a warm tide. He'd thought of Elizabeth, of the love they shared, the mistakes he made, and the secret she kept to protect this child from a man who wasn't ready to be a father. But now, as he looks at Sophie, her laughter filling the penthouse, he knows he's been given a second chance, a chance to be the man Elizabeth always believed he could be, the father Sophie deserves. Sophie claps her hands as Michael slides a slightly lumpy pancake onto her plate, her blue eyes sparkling with delight. It looks funny, but I bet it tastes good, she says, her voice bright, a child who's known hunger but now sits at a table laden with more food than she's seen in years. Michael smiles, a genuine smile that feels foreign on his face, and sits across from her, his own plate untouched as he watches her eat, her small hands sticky with syrup, her laughter a balm to his wounded soul. You're right, he says, his voice soft, a warmth in his tone that he hasn't heard in decades. It's not perfect, but we'll get better. We've got time. Sophie nods, her mouth full, and reaches for his hand, her small fingers curling around his, a gesture that's become their anchor, a silent promise that they're in this together. Later, Michael takes Sophie to the small cemetery on the edge of the city, the place where Anna, Elizabeth, rests, her unmarked grave a quiet testament to a life of struggle and love. Sophie carries a bouquet of white roses, her mother's favorite, her small hands arranging them with care, her blue eyes glistening with tears as she whispers, I found him, Mom. Just like you said I would. Michael kneels beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his voice a whisper as he speaks to the woman he loved and lost. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, he says, his tears falling onto the snow-dusted ground. I didn't know, but I'm here now. I'll take care of her, I promise. I'll love her like you did. Sophie leans against him, her small body warm against his, and they sit together in the quiet, a father and daughter united by a love that transcends time, a love that Elizabeth nurtured even in her absence. Back at the penthouse, Michael sets up a small memorial for Elizabeth in the living room.